Alright, Nekusar versus Prime Speaker Zegana. We have lands in the hand, and a remand and a demonic tutor, so I think we can go for this hand. Giving Prime Speaker Zegana a lot of card draw, which we will be doing in a Nekusar deck, seems like risky business. Yeah, I don't know, we'll have to see. I think we're just going to go for a turn 1 Bojuka Bog here. Yeah, I don't know how much flashback style effects our opponent's going to have in a Prime Speaker deck. We might regret doing that. They might have a Snapcaster or something like that to make use of, but I don't like to keep tap lands in the hand for any length of time if I can help it. Luckily our opponent is playing more slowly than they might like to also. We can go for... Do we want to go for a Howling Mine? I don't think we do yet. I think we can just hold up Remand here. And we'll go for a red and black source, I think. Or do we go for red and... No, we have to go for red and blue if we want to hold up the Remand, obviously. So that is a Volcanic Island. And we will hold up the Remand against our opponent. Yeah, so what we want to do in an Nekusar deck is force our opponent to draw way more cards than they will ever need, and ping them for damage every time they draw, and there's even some effects for every time they discard as well. Not going to remand the Coiling Oracle. Hopefully they don't flip a land off of that. Oh, they get a Cyclonic Rift, so that is good to know that they have that in hand. It might be worth just keeping the remand the entire game until they get Cyclonic Rift off. And yeah, there's a Megrim. Yeah, I think we just play the Megrim here, to be honest. Megrim is an enchantment, and whenever an opponent discards a card, it deals 2 damage to that player. So what inevitably happens is you give your opponent so many cards. We might be seeing a Spell Pierce here. We might be giving our opponent so many cards that they inevitably have to discard. No Swan Song. Yeah, fine with me. I don't know if that's the right play for our opponent, but we'll see if it plays out later on. Yeah, so your opponent discards so many cards throughout the game that the extra 2 damage from Megrim and Liliana's Caress and cards like that just really hurt, as well as all the card draw that's hurting them as well. You don't tend to do too much damage through combat. Okay, and our opponent going for a Kefnet the Mindful. Flying Indestructible 5/5, it can't attack or block unless you have 7 or more cards in hand, which our opponent does not. And then for 4 mana, our opponent can draw it, and they may return a land card to their owner's hand. Yeah, I should really have that in my, not Teferi, what's she called? Tatyova. I should really have that in my Tatyova deck. I remember seeing that card and thinking before now that I should have that. And I didn't actually realise that the return a land to your owner's hand is a May ability. Yeah, so a land you control to its owner's hand. Yeah, and that's a May effect. I thought that was something that you had to do as part of the casting cost, but apparently I read that wrong. Okay. We can slow down our opponent here, but it will get rid of our token. I think I might just Demonic Tutor for some ramp, to be honest. Next turn, if we get a land and a Mana Crypt, that'll be 5, 6, 7, so that will be holding up Remand and playing Nekusar. And we could use... Yeah, we could use the Mana Crypt. No, I think we could go for a Sol Ring and then play out Howling Mine. I think that's what we do. Unfortunately, giving our opponent so much card draw will turn Kefka into a 5/5 flying indestructible. So that is something that is well worth not forgetting. Where are we? We'll go for the Sol Ring here. And then take that straight into... We don't want a Days Undoing yet, I think. No, because we don't have any pain on the battlefield, so we'll go for the Sol Ring. And then there's Nothing else for us to do other than swing in with a bird and get a free 2 damage in. We can outrace our opponent against a Coiling Oracle. It might take, God, how many turns would that take? 15 turns? Whereas it would take our opponent 29. So yeah, the only problem with Howling Mine here is it is really good for 2 mana. It gets some extra card draw going for everybody, but it does give it to your opponent first. So that is a little bit of a downside, because if our opponent draws into Artifact Hate now and kills it, they'll have gotten card draw and we'll have paid 2 mana for it. But on the bright side, I suppose it gets the Artifact Hate out of our opponent's hand, so it's not completely downside. It's certainly not worth not playing it. It's 2 mana. It's just a bit of a downer that you can't. Maybe if you drew a card on your end step, then it would have been better, but they've only started doing that, Wizards, I've noticed in recent years. They've started. Oh, and there we go, a Crossing Grip. So that's against the Sol Ring, so that's not. Yeah, it's not the worst, but I'd rather our opponent hadn't done that, of course. We'll just have to hope for a land now, which we're likely to get off a Howling Mine. Yes, we do get a land, so we can go for Nekusar. This is running a lot slower than I would normally like it to. We'll get a Badlands off of this, I think. What does Smouldering Marsh do? It always enters tapped, so we'll have to go for a Badlands. We have our own Cyclonic Rift, so my opponent and myself can just bounce each other's things back and forth like crazy if we decide to. How much mana is our opponent on? 2, 4, 5, 6. So if they play a land next turn, they can use Cyclonic Rift. And we are just going to swing in with the bird token and pass to our opponent here. Our opponent also has a Riptide Lab, which is 2 and tap, return a target wizard you control to its owner's hand. That is most likely to just keep recasting Prime Speaker Zegana, I imagine. Our opponent is going to be pinged for quite a bit of damage now. But they're also going to draw into cards, and it also switches on Kefnet, assuming that our opponent doesn't play a couple of cards before combat. So we're going to have to start holding back the bird token. And our opponent also has 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah, still 6 mana. But surely they drew into a land out of all that. I don't know if I want to Days Undoing next turn. Yeah, it does. Each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library, and then draw 7 cards. If it's your turn, end the turn. See, this is the only problem with Nekusar, is you can fall into the trap of growing fond of cards that are in your hand, when really what you want to do is just keep wheeling and keep wheeling every single chance you get, and just get a hell of a lot of damage onto your opponent. Don't get too distracted by any cards in your hand. Just an Acidic Slime. I'm guessing that is going for the Howling Mine, but they might be going for one of our lands. It is going for the Howling Mine, okay. Our opponent sees the threat. And they cannot swing in with Kefnet, so what they should have done is played the Acidic Slime the turn after, but it's fine with me not taking 5 damage. Alright, and here we go. Here's another Pain piece. That's Kedirect, Parasite. It's a 1/1 for 1. Whenever an opponent draws a card, if you control a red permanent, our commander is a red permanent, you may have it deal 1 damage to that player. Yeah, we don't have anything else. We could make a land drop with the Ponder, so I think we'll do that and hold up Remand. Which is really slow with Nekusar, or with any Grixis deck, I suppose. You want to get into Artifact Ramp. It's been pretty slow so far, but luckily our opponent hasn't gone crazy with Zegana. Okay, Notion Thief is... Yeah, I think I just want to get into the Dragon Skull Summit, to be honest. We do not want to shuffle. We'll play the Dragon Skull, and at that I think we will just hold up Remand. Our opponent may well go for a Prime Speaker Zegana next turn if they get into a land card. So we can just sit back and deal damage with our 2 damage dealers here. Our opponent is dealt 2 damage from drawing 2 cards. 4 damage even, because it's 2 from each pinger there. But we are reloading their hand. What's that? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we can see a Prime Speaker here, or a Cyclonic Rift. I think it might be possible for us to see a Cyclonic Rift. We'll just block with the bird token. I don't think we're going to be swinging in with that for the rest of the game. If our opponent holds up 7 mana, we can just assume that they're waiting to Cyclonic Rift. Yeah, okay. So they're waiting for the end of our turn. It's lucky that we saw that Cyclonic Rift. Otherwise, we might not have played around it. Can we get the Maze of Ith down now? I think we can. We're not going to draw into anything else. And that will be 1, 2, 3, 4 mana. And then we can hold up Notion Thief and Remand. So I think we'll do that. Okay, and we'll pass the turn and wait for our opponent to Cyclonic Rift. They can always just Rift on their turn, but that does swallow up their own turn, so yeah, we'll remand that and see if we can draw into anything else that we can flash in. No, Liliana's Caress. That doesn't help us, although, yeah, I think Days Undoing does not discard. Each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library, so some of the wheel effects tell you specifically to discard. But this is really what you want to do. You want to drag the game out as long as you can. You'd rather get a fast start with Artifact Ramp, but I mean that's true of almost every Commander deck. And then just sit back on your pain effects, of which there are quite a lot in the deck. Worst case scenario, you can just force your opponent to draw cards, and then you draw the cards instead with something like Notion Thief, and you just gain a hell of a lot of advantage over your opponent. Okay, our opponent is keeping hold of the Cyclonic Rift, so we effectively time warped them last turn. That's 2, 3, 4, 5 mana. Maybe they're trying to go after the Thran Dynamo. Okay, they're just going to Cyclonic Rift like that, which is actually not terrible. I'm not sure I would have done that personally, but this way we don't get the extra card draw next turn, I suppose. And we can Cyclonic Rift our opponent, but I don't really want to give them the Acidic Slime. But at least we have options here. A Force of Will is very nice. We can get rid of the Whelming Wave with that. I think we'll just get out Nekusar. Get some more damage on our opponent. Ah, and I see. Are they going for a counter spell? Bounce and counter, maybe. Okay, counter spell. I think we will counter the counter spell with the Whelming Wave. Force of Will even, exiling the Whelming Wave. And do we want to... I think we just Days Undoing here, to be honest. We need to start trying to draw this game to a close now. Okay, so our opponent didn't take any damage from the Day's Undoing. I'm not sure why that is. I thought maybe Day's Undoing doesn't draw. I need to look into that because I could possibly take that card out for something else if it doesn't draw. I thought our opponent would be down to something like 1. I think they're at 1 life. And then if they'd drawn... Yeah, they were at 15 even. And I think if they'd drawn the 7 cards there, they would have been down to 1 life, having been dealt 14 damage. But the Day's Undoing doesn't draw by the looks of it. I'll have to look at that because, in fact, I have my phone here. Let me take a look. Our opponent drawing more cards off the ponder. But let me look at my phone for Day's Undoing. And I can read that. Okay, each player shuffles his hand and graveyard into his library and then draws 7 cards. Each player does that. I don't know why it didn't deal any damage to my opponent then. Maybe it's bugged. I'll have to look into that and see if Day's Undoing is bugged. But anyway, what has happened so far? Not a whole lot. Our opponent has just pondered while I've been jabbering on. Nothing's happened. We've drawn into the mana rocks that we were looking for in the early game. We have protection for Nekusar with Darksteel Plate. Mana Drain with the awesome artwork is a great card to draw into. We have another wheel effect there. And more card draw there. Our opponent going for the Ghost Quarter on the Maze of Ith, which isn't the end of the world. Yes, we do want to use that ability. We'll go for... I think we'll go for a blue source. And now we have Mana Drain mana up. I'm sure our opponent had no idea that they were actually helping us there with the Ghost Quarter. All for the sake, I imagine, of getting the Trigon Predator through to kill the Thran Dynamo. So whatever our opponent casts here, as long as it's big, it looks like we're going to be able to kill it with Mana Drain. Not specifically because it's big, but you really want to get big spells with Mana Drain because, for those of you who don't know, it counts as a spell, and at the beginning of your next main phase, add an amount of colourless mana equal to the spell's converted mana cost. And I would hope that our opponent is going for Prime Speaker here, but they're not. They're going for Wood Elves. That will give them 2, 3, 4, 5 mana. Yeah, I'm not going to counter a Wood Elves. I'm going to counter something that is actually useful to our opponent, I think, and hope. But luckily we've got to the point where we don't particularly need the mana rocks now. Willing our opponent to tap out here. This isn't the typical way a Prime Speaker Zegana deck tends to be played. This seems to be just Simic good stuff. Prime Speaker, you tend to want to play out big creatures and then get the big creatures to draw lots of cards off of the Prime Speaker. So maybe our opponent just isn't drawing into those spells. I'm not sure what's going on. Now what do we want to do? Okay, and our opponent just scoops up. We had 2, what I was looking at there was the Spiteful Visions and the Font of Mythos to draw more cards for our opponent. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So what I probably would have done was just get the, not the Spiteful Visions, the Font of Mythos, because that doesn't hurt us, unlike the Spiteful Visions, and then just hold up, probably get a Signet down and hold up the Mana Drain. But yeah, that's what Nekusar wants to do. We bumbled through that a little bit. But our opponent, I assume, wasn't really drawing into the big creatures that they needed to get Zegana going. That is typically what you want to do, is ramp, get big creatures out, draw off Zegana, rinse and repeat. But we at least showed a little bit of what Nekusar wants to do. Draw into lots of cards, have your opponent draw into lots of cards, and hurt them for doing so. It can be a risk-reward type thing where you can really help your opponent to bulldoze you by giving them the cards, and they don't actually care about being hurt. Nekusar's pinging doesn't count as commander damage, so it's a bit risky, but it works a lot of the time. The deck list is in the description if you want to have a look at it. Thank you very much for watching. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye bye.